Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel.
The front hinge pin brace has a sharp-edged side and a rounded edge side. Mount the sharp-edged side towards the bulkhead. Okay, I know exactly what they're talking about. This is a stamped piece of steel. In other words, it's being formed from a sheet by something coming down and cutting the shape and the two holes. And that's why the edges here are rounded all the way around. And on the back side, which is the bottom side, they are sharp-edged, sharper, not like a cutting edge, but this is more rounded because it's a press is being stamped down through there. And so you want to mount the round side forward. So it would go on here like this. And now we need our two arms. Let's make sure we face them correctly. So they are going to be, you can just look at where your sway bar is, and you can see that it's going to attach here. And if it was up at the front like that, that's not going to work. So this is backwards, and is there a top or a bottom? I don't think so. They're both identical on both sides. So the left one will work for the right, the right one will work for the left. And the back side also here, the hole is going to be a little closer, most likely. It doesn't, it pushes through. So that's what that anchor screw is. There's going to probably a piece that goes on here that anchors the fronts. So let's get the other arm on. You know, also we can put in those two screws before we put this all together. They are in here. I discussed this either earlier in this video or in a previous video. There are 6 screws that come in this little bag 2.1. 2 of them are round heads. We are going to be using those at this time. The flat heads, if you put in this piece already, you've already used them. Hey, honey. I'm filming. Give me a second and I'll pause up. So I'm just going to leave those 4 there for now. So since we can insert these pins from the front, we can go ahead and put these screws in advance, because all they do is provide a bump stop. Don't over tighten them, just tighten them down, and it just overlaps that hole enough to keep our kingpin from sliding out the backside. This is also a good time to make sure you've got a smooth action. I'm going to just go ahead and pull this off here real quick. And then we're going to put 2 grub screws in from below that are going to anchor our kingpins. Now, that's important that we understand that, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Once we anchor these kingpins with a grub screw, they can't rotate, okay? So the pivot action is going to be here and here, not in here. So we need to make sure that our kingpins rotate smoothly in this hole. If they don't, we may need to ream it a little bit. but it feels like the action is pretty smooth, so we'll check that in a moment. It's a little sticky, and that can make a difference. There's no wobble or anything. See, and I can't tell whether that's the kingpin rotating in here or it's stiff. So let's go ahead and put in our grub screws, and then we'll test. That's strange that I have two different grub screws of two different colors, but I may have used this silver one where they wanted it somewhere else. I don't think it makes a difference. It's just color. They're all the same size. So otherwise something else wouldn't have fit. Maybe one of them just escaped the paint process and they threw it in the bag anyway. Okay, that has touched down, and yes, see, we're stiff. So I need to loosen this up. I need to push out the kingpin. I need to remove this screw. I can't ream the arm with the screw in place. And let's see if they tell us how big our kingpins are. By 34, so we need a 3mm reamer. This is a 3mm reamer, and if you haven't seen a video where I've used one of these, they basically have these little cutaways. They're sharp edged, and the idea is that you're gonna run this in and out through here, preferably over a trash can, and it's going to cut away a small amount of material, thus making a smooth and straight hole all the way through. As you can see, 3mm reamer. These are made by Dynamite. These are my favorites. I've tried a couple other brands. Hoodie also makes excellent tools, but for the price, you cannot beat the Dynamite tools. And I found these on Amazon. You can get them through other vendors. It's not exclusive to Amazon by any means, but I'm very fond of these because the edges are very sharp and they make very precise sizes, and I've been very, very happy with the results I get. So I'm gonna, as you can see, this doesn't rotate easily right now, and if you listen, you can hear it catching at spots. So we'll see how that looks in a second. Okay, so what you want to do is go back and forth, and while you're doing that, you want to do a turning motion with your wrist, so you're cleanly cutting away the edge. But now, as you can see, this rotates very easily on the tool, so we should have solved our problem. Let's go ahead and put our, what did I do with that? Yeah, right under my nose. God, I hate that. It's like if it was a snake, it would be biting me. Crocky, it's the African spitting cobra. It's kind of pissed off. Yeah, when you hear the cobra go, you know that the spitting cobra is about to spit on you. Sorry to steal someone's joke there. That was Bill Engvall's joke. Yes, I'm filming comedy, honey. Okay, we're still a little tight. I'm going to go ahead and do a little more there. There's no jiggle or anything, so we're not... I mean, that could also be just tension here. I think that's okay. I think that'll wear in. I'll leave that as is. Let me go ahead and pull this one. Take off the screw. I'll start by just checking it on the reamer. Yeah, see, it's stiff. When I slide that in, it's stiff. Okay. Yeah, see, this may just be, see, if I press in against this bar here, it gets smoother. I'm going to let this run in, and I'll do some laps. I'll take it off. I'll see how it's doing. If it continues to be tight, I'll go ahead and hit it some more, or maybe take a file or some thin sandpaper and just, you know, try to rub a little bit of material off of this block here, because it could just be the tension right here. See, if I push that in hard, the movement gets easier. So we'll see. So now front bumper. And this is gonna basically just snap over the back end there and screw in the front. So we need 2 3x10 button heads and 3x16 flats. And that looks like our 2 flat heads. And the 3x10s, I'm going to go with titanium. That's odd. They went with a very small size for these. Feels like, oh no, they go in. Okay. My imagination, visual illusion. I've built numerous associated kits. My first radio controlled car was an RC10 Gold Pan from back in the day when those were first brought out. And they've gotten just better and better and better about designing kits that are user-friendly, that go together easy, that are easy to maintain. That's always something that people ask for, is, you know, design it so I can get to the differential easier, design it so I can take this off easier, so that you, when you're at a track and you're in between heats and you want to swap something out because something's broken, or you want to try to improve the tuning, you don't want to take off, you know, 20 bolts. Again, remember, very soft plastic on the bumper piece back here. This is hard plastic. This is very soft, so don't over tighten these. Once they start getting snug, start going really easy on them, and just get them touched down. Okay, coming together well. So I'm into bag 3, step 1. This is a good time for me to pause up and pay attention to my wife, who just got home from work. Okay, here's our bag 3. I am surprised that I've replaced this much hardware already. I may not have used everything that was in those. I know I didn't use that little blue spacer. That's for the missing linkage. But I'm going to go ahead and pass those off, and if I need any of those down the road, I know where they are. Now, okay, make sure you notice that there are two different sizes to these pieces right here. There are these two, and there are these two. Now, there are others available in different sizes. These are used to position our axle height. So you can go with the larger one above and the smaller one below. That's going to raise the axle and lower the car in relationship to the axle. Or you can go vice versa. There's also some that are thinner and even larger. This is kind of the mid ground for tuning. And it depends on the type of track you're running. If you're planning to run on carpet, you don't have the undulations of a dirt track. You don't have the loose rocks and other things that can, hit the bottom of the pan. So you need the car to be at a higher ride height. And that's one of the main ways of doing it is changing that axle height. Anyway, we'll deal with that later. So I'm going to just pause for a moment. I'm going to remove all these pieces. They give us several. We've got 3s left and right and 4s left and right. They give us one pair of these. I'm not sure what the difference is between these two, but I'll go over that for you shortly. Okay, again, we have a tuning commonality. These are our steering blocks, 4 left and right, it's 4 millimeter, and then we have the 3 millimeters. On all of my setup sheets that I have here as examples, everybody's running 4. So I'm going to put the 3s away, may never use them. Okay, so now we need to put on our little steering pieces here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a left and a right of these, like so. We're going to take a pair of ball studs, the 8 millimeter. Those are the shorter of the 4 that are here. There are 2 that are 12, it looks like. You do not want to use these for this part here. You want to use these 2 short guys. Make sure I've got those correct. Yes. And each one of them gets a 1 millimeter blue aluminum spacer. These are probably 5.5 mil bolts. Yep. Now remember, you've got a lock nut. You don't need to over tighten these. You don't want to risk splitting the carbon fiber laminate. So snug them down tight, but don't be King Kong with it. Make sure you build 2 that are opposite each other. Doesn't matter which 2, as long as they're the mirror image of each other. Okay, now we take our 2 4s, our 2 4 steering blocks, and let's see, well, let's jump ahead here. Let's not jump ahead. Let's start with the bearings. And the bearings are 5x10x4s. And there are 4 of them. Okay. Remember, blue side out. It's probably the best way to go. The rubber seal is a better dust cover. There's no inner spacer. We're going to take our 2 8.5 millimeter axles. And then we are going to need an M3x6, which I'll put titanium on those. Definitely put on some Loctite. Just going to use a good old crescent wrench to hang on to this. Just a 12mm hex. And there we go. Wait a minute, am I putting that in inside or outside? Hang on a second, I may be screwing up here. Yeah, I did. I need to put it in opposite. My bad. These are the kinds of things that happen when you're busy focusing on filming and not watching your parts. I was really thinking about this 8.5 measurement here. These are stamped with 8.5. I'm curious if anyone is running anything other than the 8.5s. Okay, wheel hex 8.5 stock. Wheel hex kit. That means they're running the 8.5 wheel hex kit. No one's running anything different. Another. See, now that's actually a nice thing to see, that, you know, you've got different driving environments and everybody is running the same stock pieces. That means that you don't need to do a lot of tuning to the car, that the stock build is a good universal setup for many different kinds of conditions, and it doesn't need a lot of tuning to make the car handle well. That's a nice thing. It means you don't need to buy as many parts. You know, you're not buying half the car over again in aftermarket pieces. Okay, on to step 2. We need 4 M3x8s. So let's check our orientation. Okay, so like so, and the ball stud that is facing up like that. So now this is another piece that is a tunable piece. Before I screw those in, just let me check here. Those are called the block arm. Let's check the tuning sheet. Everyone's running the kit arm. They make other sizes of these, but everyone's running the same thing. Again, excellent. Yep. And that's one of the reasons I like going over these other build sheets from other people. It kind of helps you figure out what things are worth trying. In other words, if a guy who's racing on carpet and a guy who's racing on dirt is using the exact same, you know, angle for this piece here that the kit recommends, and they're all happy with it, then you don't even need to try the 3. It's not going to work better for you. If it didn't work better for them, it's not going to work better for you. So, you know, people love to say, you know, well, I have my own driving style. Well, that usually means that you're not driving well. The faster people tend to run the same types of setups, and they alter their driving style to a setup that makes the car go faster. If you've if you've been involved in real racing of you know, actual cars, in almost any class, you're going to find the same kind of thing. You know, the car has to be set up properly, and you don't set the car up to the driver as much as you set the car up to the track. Okay, we have 2 mirror image pieces. So now we come to these pieces here. Now, make sure you don't trim off this little tab at the end. Just cut them free. That is a necessary piece. It's like a stop. As you can see, there's little indentations for those to go in here. This is something we may see more tuning in. They give us several different ones. We've got 2 5s, 2 2.5s, and 2 zeros. And what this is going to do is this is going to alter the kingpin position within this piece. So this piece is going to sit right in here on our swing arm. So those are called caster block inserts, and they are going to alter caster. They're going to alter the angle at which this passes through here. In other words, they're not raising it or lowering it. What they're doing is either leaning it, you know, they're leaning it back, but how far back it goes. You would never lean forward. You would never have positive caster. It's always into the negative, and or rearward, if you wish. And so what these have is the hole is at an angle through here, like so, but it's not as radical as what I'm holding here. It's going to be a more subtle change, but it's still there. For example, let me just slide this through here, and then let me do the same thing with the 5 degree, and that should help show you. You can see the hole is at the almost at the top here, and it's almost at the bottom here. So now if I hold these 2 pieces together, you can see that the kingpin is at a different angle. So that's what we're doing with these 2, and this is something you may see more of a change with as far as people's choice. So I'm going to check that out before I insert. Let's see what they recommend for stock. So the caster block insert, they recommend +5 for stock. The guy who's racing on, I think this is carpet. Let's see. Everyone's running the 5 degree caster block, regardless of situation. So again, something that may not be worth tinkering with. The question is 5 degrees in which direction? So, because you could have 5 degrees this way or 5 degrees the other way. So whether it's upside down or right side up is important, because you've really got 6, or excuse me, well, no, yeah, you've got 5 possible settings. You've got plus or minus 5 degrees, plus or minus 2.5 degrees, or 0 degrees. 0 is going to be 0 no matter what, whether it's upside or downside. So this gives you 1 setting regardless of position. The 2.5s give you 2 depending on whether it's high or low, and the 5 gives you 2 whether it's high or low. I hope that explains. And you can see that right here from the chart. You've got 0, 2.5 up, gives you 27.5 degrees total caster for a 25 degree bulkhead orientation. Now, again, that's our front piece here. If you recall, the block that our arms swing on is either 25 or 30 degrees. We're running it at 25 degrees, and that's what everyone seems to be running at, is the 25. So you're looking at the numbers across here for total caster. So if we run at 0, we're adding 0 to our 25-degree block, which makes 25 degrees. If we add 2.5, we get 27 to 25, we get 27.5. If it's down, we're subtracting 2.5 from 25, so we get 22.5 degrees. Likewise, with 5, up or down, we get 30 or 20. So everyone is running plus 5, which is 5 up, which means the little pin faces up. That gives us 30 degrees total caster. Okay? So I hope I have explained how to use this chart and how to read your various pieces. If you had chosen to not do 25, if you had chosen to flip the block and do 30 up front, you could have gotten the same result by using the 0 block facing down the 30 block, the 0 block in any position, up or down, would still give you your 30 degrees. So that would be the same. But for whatever reason, they like running 25 at the block and another 5 degrees out at the arm. That seems to be the preferred methodology. That's what I'm going to go with. And like I said, that is for us for a mild surface or for a rough surface. So you can tinker with those if you wish. I will be focusing on tuning stuff that seems to be something that makes a difference, or a positive difference, which is going to be more things like shock absorbers, spring choices, sway bar choices, things like that. Shock oil. So, spacers. Stock setting here is 2 millimeter at the top, 1 millimeter at the bottom. So we use 1 for each side. Now these pieces, you probably should have a parts box going. You don't want to throw those away. Likewise, you don't want to throw the 3s away. You may decide to try them at some point just to tinker. It never hurts to learn things, learn what does what in a car. Not a lot of people really understand what caster is. Caster is like rake on a motorcycle or a bicycle. On a bicycle, most times the forks are curved. On older style bikes, on mountain bikes that have shock absorbers, the point is that here's your steering angle, okay? And if you drew a line through the head of your bicycle steering to the ground, the axle isn't directly under it, it's slightly forward, okay? That creates rake. And what that means is the front end wants to point straight. When the bicycle is in motion, the front end doesn't want to turn left or right. That's why you can ride a bicycle with no hands if you balance yourself and keep the bike straight up. If you lean to one side or the other, it'll turn to that side. But when straight up and down, it wants to stay straight. Okay? That's why you have rake. That's also why you have caster in a car. It's the propensity of the wheels to want to stay straight ahead. Straight line stability. That's a very short explanation of the geometry and the what's and whys of caster. So let me just check this setting here against my other sheets. So this gives us an axle height of 1 degree, which is the stock setting. And 1 degree. And everyone is running 1 degree. So buying the kit with the extra pieces probably isn't a worthwhile use of your money. So we're going to just slide our little spacers in like that. And then let me get the hardware out. I need M3 by 14s. I need 2 of them for each side, so 4. And there are 4 titanium M3x14s. Now, this is an especially nice place to have the titanium because this is unsprung weight. I've talked about this in many builds. I'm going to give it to you again in case you haven't seen one of those videos. Unsprung weight is weight that is outboard from the vehicle that is held up by the springs, not the chassis. In other words, these A-arms are not really unsprung weight. The ends of them kind of are, but unsprung weight is this. It's this. It's these screws. It's everything that is outboard of the swing arms. The shocks are not unsprung weight. Your wheels and your tires are unsprung weight. The more unsprung weight you have, the harder it is for your suspension to move out of the way of a bump and then move back down to the correct driving position. Okay? The more unsprung weight, the slower your suspension reacts because that's more mass to have to move out of the way. Ideally, your suspension wants to keep the car at a level height and move out of the way of bumps up and down like this. The more weight out here, the harder it is to make that motion without impacting the chassis. Okay? That is also a quick explanation of unsprung weight. But universal truth, the less unsprung weight you have, the better your suspension works. Period, end of sentence. So keep that in mind for future. So let me just make sure I've got our orientation correct here for this piece. So let's see, we want to make sure we know what left is and what right is. Okay, so according to our diagram here, this is our left side steering knuckle, okay? This is our right side steering block or caster block. And we want the ball stud, which uses these round holes here, and the nut that goes to the rear. And it even says L for left. So we know we've got the right one. This is up and down. Put the 1 millimeter spacer below. Excuse me for bumping the camera. 2 millimeter spacer above. And slide our steering knuckle in here. Our steering block. Insert one of our screws, get it started. Insert another one from above. Get that started. Now, this is something I want to show you. Okay, barring a force that flexes this arm here, okay, there's no need for these bolts to be tightened. We could run the car right like this. Okay, this moves smoothly in a rotation. It does not move up and down. It does not jiggle at an angle. It is the perfect fit for this piece with these spacers. So over tightening these screws is going to benefit you zero. Okay, in fact, it's going to hurt. As you can see a little bit of that blue spacer sticking through the top of this piece of plastic. If you clamp down on that, it will crush that blue spacer and it will widen it out, and then it won't turn smoothly and you won't have good steering. So tighten these down carefully just until they touch the aluminum pieces. You are going to see space between the plastic and the head of the screw. That's normal and fine. Okay? I'm sorry if I overstress things like that, but I'm trying to teach the young people or the inexperienced. If you're older and you're just getting into the hobby, I'm trying to teach you the things you need to build a good kit that you're going to be happy with, that isn't going to be a problem where you've done some things that have created stresses or tighten things and damage something, and you go out to drive your car and it doesn't run right and you can't get it to handle and you're frustrated, and legitimately so, but from your own mistake, unfortunately. Whereas if you learn these things that I'm trying to teach you, you won't make those mistakes and you'll build a decent kit and you'll be very happy with it. And that's my goal. See, it is a nice snug fit between these, and that's what it's designed to be. There we go. Notice how you can see, as I said, you're going to see space between the head of the bolt and the plastic. That's fine. That's exactly what you want. So again, a nice smooth action here. And I did this upside down because I'm busy. Nope, I didn't. Did I? I did. I'm an idiot. I'm busy talking. Busy talking. No big deal. No, I didn't have it upside down. I did not. It's exactly the way it needs to be. See, now I'm busy second-guessing myself. Maybe I should cook my wife some dinner and get myself fed at the same time. Okay, so I should have done this in the previous step, but that's fine. So let's see. We are okay. The stock build says put it here. Let me check my other sheets. This is for our Camber link. And everybody is running Camber link position A, which is the innermost camber link. If we're looking at this one, that is the one that is closest to the inside of the vehicle. And so that's what we're going to do. Now, for those of you who are unaware of what a camber link is and its significance, that is a video and a half all by itself, not to mention a class in engineering. But short and sweet, okay? We have a link that goes from this position here to this position here, and this kind of creates an H. It creates a series of 4 pivots that allow this arm to move up and down. Now, depending on the length of one, which is fixed, in relation to our camber link, which is adjustable, we will have a different camber angle at one position versus another. If they are exactly the same and the pivots are exactly the same distance apart, if it's a true H, okay, that H can be skewed. In other words, you move one arm in relationship to the other and you end up with equidistant angles, okay? If we adjust the distance from one pivot, and it would actually be this one, okay, from one pivot to the other, if we change one of them while leaving the other constant, as this moves and this angle changes here, this angle is going to change at a different rate. You'll hear words like camber gain, okay? What that means is an increase in camber. Now, cars handle better with a little bit of negative camber. If you've ever watched an F1 race, Formula 1, you notice their front tires are almost tipped in like this. You know, they've got a really steep angle of negative camber. Negative camber is camber to the inside. The tops are closer together than the bottoms of the wheel, okay? Camber gain means that as the suspension moves up, like you're hitting a bump or leaning into a turn, the camber increases. The angle becomes steeper, not staying the same or tilting outwards. That would be a loss of camber. You're generally going for neutral or camber gain, and you're generally going for camber gain because as the car leans into a turn, you want that outside tire to angle more steeply and bite harder into the dirt. The same thing goes for the rear. You have camber adjustment at the adjustable camber link at the rear, and depending on that relationship, depending on where these pivots are located in relationship to each other, in relationship to the arm down here, we will have a change in camber over the movement of that suspension. Remember, our suspension is going to have a bottom out point and it's going to have a max point that is going to be determined by the length of the shock absorber stroke. That is how long the shock absorber can be at max and how far it can be compressed. That's the stroke. That distance determines how much this suspension arm can move up and down, which determines how much our front wheels can move up and down. In that range of motion, there will be a change in camber or a neutral camber, but generally there's a change in camber, and how much and in which direction is very important, and that's something you're going to learn to tune for. Okay? Another long description of something. Sorry about that, but I'm, again, trying to pass on as much as I can. I've talked about this in other builds, maybe not as much detail as some builds, but again, I don't know if you've watched those videos. Most people will come into my channel and they'll watch the videos for the cars that interest them, and they won't watch the other videos, even though there's tremendous amount of information in there for you guys. So you might want to go and check out some of my other videos that you haven't seen, because just like this one, I put a lot of information in there for you. And I can't remember to tell everything I know in a single build video set, so not to mention not in one video. So we got all that done. Now we need to put in our kingpins. So we're going to want to see how the, we need to make sure our movement is smooth. Otherwise we might need to break out the reamer. So our front one is going, our left side goes in here. We're going to slide in our kingpin. Wait a minute, there's got to be a spacer in here. I'm leaving something out. Yes, caster block spacer. Sorry, my bad. Just use a smaller wrench to push it out. Okay, and we should check on that spacer. In this setup, it's to the rear. Caster block spacer, 1 millimeter. Everybody's doing the exact same thing in the same location, so that's nice and easy. The caster block spacer goes behind. So basically just kind of hang the spacer on there. Oop. Didn't move fast enough. Okay. Oops. Okay, there's our piece, and the movement is good. There's a little bit of jiggle there. I could potentially go with a... See, that's why I don't like plastic spacers. They're not always fully accurate. Let me And they're in my travel box. Okay, for the same reasons that I like to use aluminum spacers in places like this, they're just more accurate, and places like this where you're changing camber angle, I prefer them to plastic spacers in a location like this. These are 1mm spacers. Let me try one of these and see what kind of a result we get. I've also got some 0.5mm, so I might put more than one in place. What I'll do is I'll start on this side since I've already got that one in place. Let me see if it's easier to do this down like this. I'm trying to make it so you can see what I'm doing while I'm doing it, but that can be hard. Okay, that's much better. There's still a little bit of wiggle room there, but I don't think that's 1/2 millimeter. I would need basically like a shim that's a fraction of a millimeter, and I don't have anything like that. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll put an aluminum one on the other side here because it did seem to tighten it up a little bit. So we take one of these little screws here, and did they give me a different head size there? Looks like. Okay, no big deal. Oops. I am going to save these plastic spacers. May come in handy someday. Oops, how much? Okay, yeah, see, very little movement there, so that's much better than those plastic spacers. So if you've got some 1mm aluminum spacers, I highly recommend you use one. If you don't have them, I highly recommend you get some. The less jiggle, wobble, movement in your suspension, the more accurate your tuning will be down the road, the more accurate a result you'll get from changes. Slop has a way of degrading the quality of any change that you make, and it makes it hard to figure out what does what. Now, I noticed that we have a hole here on the bottom that looks like it might be for a grub screw to attach to that, to push that pin there, but I don't see anything in the... Okay, you can install an optional 4670 set screw for extra hold on the caster block inserts and hinge pin. Now, that might not be a bad idea if you don't have 1mm spacers. You could use that lock point there. It might make the action a little stiffer because the kingpin is going to have to rotate here, not just here as well. Because I have these nice and solid in place, I'm gonna continue with what I have, and I do have grub screws I could put in there. We'll see. Maybe before the end of this, I'll put a few screws in there and test for you, just to give you an answer on what that does for us. Okay. Let's see, just make sure that we've done everything here. Yeah, okay, so now we're moving towards the rear. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.